So we got this guy, Vivek Ramaswamy, running for president. I don't know how this guy is in any way, shape, or form considered a viable candidate for the presidency. This man's foreign policy plan is so retarded that, like, if he wins, if conservative white America votes Vivek into office, I'm gonna pull some like left wing type shit and like cry and leave this country. I'm big facts. Like I will literally become a sore loser. I will like shed tears and shit. I'm gonna leave this because he can't win, bro. I'm sorry, and he can't win. If anybody watching this fears World War III like I do, bruh, this man cannot be allowed to win. Because if he wins, bro, we're going to go into World War III. We're not, bro. I'm telling you, bro, somebody stop Vivek Ramaswamy, please. Let's look at this man's plan. This man's solution to the war in Ukraine is to give Russia the territory it's already conquered and to then block Ukraine from joining NATO. But let's hear it from the man himself before I start putting words in this man's mouth. Because this guy's absolutely delusional.
You said 2 weeks ago you're in favor of freezing the current line of control, letting Russia keep the Donbass region as long as Ukraine would give up all attempts to enter NATO. That's Vladimir Putin's basic demand. There's evidence of thousands of Ukrainian children being kidnapped from those areas of Russian control. Murders, atrocities in that area. Isn't that just letting Putin win despite his war crimes?
Andrew, you conveniently left out the most important part of the deal, which is what the United States wins out of it. That would only be conditioned on Vladimir Putin exiting his military alliance with China.
This guy says that like he caught her in something. He says it like he caught her in something. But let's continue watching the video because this chick folds so quick when he says it. She just folds. Morons.
The Russia-China military alliance is the single greatest threat that the United States faces today.
Excuse me, that would be conditioned, you said, on Russia containing control of the land he has grabbed. So China is a whole other question.
Yes.
Let's move on.
So there's a deal.
Let's move on
It's
to
not.
China.
It's not. Andrew,
But
1 second. This is really important to understand. I proposed a deal. There are two sides to the deal. Exit the military partnership with China. That's a crucial part of the deal that I would do.
In terms of China, you've also talked.
Oh my goodness. This chick folded so easily on one of the easiest dunks I've ever seen on the news. MSNBC, y'all need to retire because y'all have lost the sauce, bro. This was the easiest layup ever, and they allowed this man to get away with it, but we're not. See, we here at Frontier Media, which is just one guy right now, we here at Frontier Media, which is just me, we're not going to let Vivek Ramaswamy get away with this. We're going to expose why this is absolute dog shit. It's just I'm going to explain why. So this guy's first plan, I got a list of this shit right here. We're going to break it down. The first part of his plan is to cede the ground that Russia has conquered to Putin. This is so ridiculous, bro. So instead of making Putin fight for every little inch and making that Donbass region into a meat grinder for the Russian troops, we're just going to give it to him. All right, Putin, here you go. Good work, good effort. All those corpses, all that Wagner shit, good work, Putin. Here's the land that you fought so hard for. Absolute foolishness. This meant Putin declared that it would be a special military operation, not a war, a special military operation. That Russia was apparently above the bullshit. It won't take long for us to beat the Ukrainians. Just 3 days. That 3 days turned into what, like a year? The Russians are down bad right now. His troops didn't even know that they were going to be invading Ukraine. That's how messed up the Russian military is. This man couldn't even tell his troops what was going on because he didn't even have operational security. That's how incompetent the Russian military is. And that's how little faith Putin had in his troops. He was lying to them about what they were going to be doing and where they were going to be going. Russia's ineffectiveness in this war has been so blatant and so clear that it would be a fool's errand to sit there and just give the land to the Russians. You want to be incompetent and invade a neighboring nation? Y'all finna pay. Oh, y'all gonna pay. If you really believe that you're going to be able to do this and just waltz away from this with no consequences, y'all got the wrong one. See, if I was president, I would turn the entire Donbass region into the biggest meat grinder of the 21st century. Not one war post the Ukrainian war would match what I'm about to do. Because these Russians are not just going to get the Donbass region. Y'all ain't had no business invading Ukraine. Oh, you know, Putin doesn't want NATO at his borders. When has NATO ever been in any way, shape, or form physically aggressive toward Russia? This is the same Putin that invaded Crimea, Georgia, Chechnya. This is the guy that you guys are sitting there saying that this is the guy that in y'all's mind is the victim here. He's the one that needs to be paranoid. He's the one that's got to be watching over his back. Well, he does. But on a national level, you want to argue that Russia are the ones that need to be paranoid 24/7? Are we on the same planet? Get off the crack. This man's second plan, the second part of his plan, excuse me, is to bar Ukraine from joining NATO. So this guy, Putin, launches a war, displaces hundreds of thousands of people, causes genocide, kids are being kidnapped, all type of chaos, and in exchange for his fuckery, you just give him what he wanted. He wants Ukraine to not be a part of NATO because he wants Ukraine. That's the part that Vivek doesn't understand. By telling Ukraine that they can't be a part of NATO, you're giving Putin what he wants. Article 5 states that if a NATO ally is invaded, the rest of NATO has to assist that ally. This is why Putin does not want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. He needed to conquer Ukraine in order to reunify the Soviet Union. That's been his goal. He's been constantly trying to reunify the Soviet Union. If NATO and Ukraine mix up, merge, become one, what's going to happen? He can't invade Ukraine without risking the ire of all of Europe and, of course, the most destructive, violent military force on the planet in terms of capability, the United States military. He fears NATO. That's why he's extremely adamant about Ukraine not joining NATO, because he wants to bring Ukraine back into the fold, if you will, of the Soviet Union. This guy genuinely just doesn't get it. And not only that, Russia's just going to continue to invade Ukraine again because they're not a part of NATO. Oh, we get the Donbass region and these guys aren't a part of NATO? So all we got to do is just refit, gear up, resupply our troops, retrain them, learn from our mistakes in the war, figure out what we did wrong, and then about 8 to 9 years later from now, we'll just reinvade again. And because these guys aren't a part of NATO, there's no Article 5. We're back at it again. So Russia in Vivek's plan gets 2 tangible rewards. NATO and Ukraine are not in business, so Ukraine cannot get defense from NATO. So this is a tangible we're giving Putin here, that Vivek is giving Putin. It's tangible. Because if Putin invades Ukraine again, which he will, he won't have to worry about Ukraine receiving Western support. So now this guy gets 2 tangibles. Ukraine's not a part of NATO, and he gets the land of the Donbass region. Congrats, Vivek. You played yourself. And here's why you played yourself. Your binding agreement is that Putin and Xi are no longer allies. China and Russia are no longer buddies. That's your binding agreement. And Putin's just going to agree to that. Okay, Mr. Vivek, sure. I'm no longer going to be. You know what's funny? He probably will. Putin will probably grab his writing utensil. I'm going to grab, I can't show weapons on the internet. Tablet pen. Putin's going to grab his drawing tablet pen, of course, because what else would he grab? He grabs his drawing tablet pen, writes his name on the paper, and says, Mr. Vivek, here's the paper. Oh, thank God, here's the paper. Whew, we were hoping you'd do this. Here's the paper. We promise to never bother the peace of Europe again. And Vivek's going to sit there and think, oh my God, it worked. And then 10 years later, when Vivek's no longer in office, guess what's going to happen? Or shit, it might be if Vivek gets somehow lucky enough to get a second term, guess what Putin's going to do? Just reinvade Ukraine? Because guess what? If Putin decides to not break his alliance with China, which he more than likely won't because his troops just went through a massive meat grinder in Ukraine at the hands of NATO military equipment being sent to them and NATO training and NATO intel, this guy's gonna hunker down even more with China, even if he agreed on paper not to. And guess what, Vivek? You can't tangibly stop him. What are you gonna do? If Putin sits there and signs that paper, how can you tangibly know that he's no longer allied with China? What could you possibly do to stop that? What could you possibly do to stop him from just saying, did we just dupe the Americans? Oh shit. Yo, high five, dap up, gang signs, all type of shit. They celebrate, and it's like, yo, all we got to do is wait a little bit, refit, resupply, retrain our troops, figure out what we did wrong, give about 8-9 years to fully recover, because I don't even think Russia's going to economically recover from this within the next 10 years. All Russia has to do is wait it out, and they're back in the game. This plan is retarded. Russia can't be held to this agreement. They don't have to end their alliance with China, even if they write it down on a piece of paper. What are you going to do? Sanctions? They're already sanctioned. They've already psychologically prepared themselves for this. They already have a perspective on the West based around our sanctions. These people are not going to be broken by these sanctions. The only way to break the resolve of Putin, the Russian people, and the Russian military is to make the Ukrainian war the biggest oopsie-daisies incident in the 21st century, in the last, I don't know, all of Putin's reign. We need to make this incident the biggest oopsie-daisies incident in all of Putin's reign. This has to be his biggest mistake. It has to be. We cannot afford to choose anything else, because if the tangibles that we're giving him is worth this ridiculous, flimsy, oh, give up your alliance, how is that even worth it? All Putin has to do is say, oh shit. All he wants us to do is do something that he can't really stop us from not doing? What if we decide that we want to keep our alliance with China after signing on the paper saying we wouldn't? Is he going to do invade Russia? He can't invade us because we'll just send off nuclear bombs and destroy the entire world along with ourselves. He can't invade China because China will launch the bombs as well if they get invaded by the United States of America, because they're not going to win. So at this point, Vivek would have locked himself into a situation he can't get out of. This is stupidity. And people are literally sitting there saying, oh my God, yes, America first. He's finally a president that's going to put America first over Ukraine. We're sending all this money to Ukraine. We need to stop. He won't tell you guys the full story. Here's what you guys need to understand, is that Russia is terrified right now because they can barely even beat the Ukrainians. If NATO mobilized against Russia, they would be destroyed. This is why the Russians don't want Ukraine to be a part of NATO. They want Ukraine for themselves. They want Ukraine to be under the Soviet Union, if you will. That's what they want. They want to reunify the Soviet Union. They can't do that if the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, France, even Poland, they're gearing up. They can't do that if the powers of Europe will converge upon them in war. They can't win. They need Ukraine to no longer be a part of NATO so they can continue to conquer Ukraine and ethnically destroy Ukraine and replace it with a bunch of Russian settlers. That's what's going to happen. This guy's delusional. He's absolutely delusional, this Vivek guy. And his decisions would literally spark World War III. Because what's going to happen is if this plan of his actually gets put into action, which I hope it doesn't. I hope people love to use these names, Lockheed and Raytheon. I hope the military-industrial complex sits his ass down and says, look, you're not ending shit. You're not stopping shit. You're not giving shit to anybody. What you're going to do is send more shit to the Ukrainians. You're going to beef them up even more. You're going to do all of this shit to fuck with these. You are going to turn the Donbass region into a meat grinder. That's what you're going to do. Shit. Talking about I'm going to give Putin this and give Putin that. Are you crazy? What, so he can continue to push and push and push until we have no choice but to fight him? And then it becomes World War III because Putin knows he can't beat NATO. So guess what he's going to do? Press that button and blow everybody up. He's not going to allow Russia to fall under his leadership because it'd be the destruction of him. He would much rather the world be a barren wasteland when he pops up from his bunker than Russia turn on him and destroy him. I'm willing to bet that. The Russians are in complete irrational mode right now. And trying to sit there and give them what they want is not the answer. They already got Chechnya. They already got Georgia. They got Dagestan. They got all of this stuff going on in their country. They don't need anything more. They don't deserve it. They don't need it. And to be frank, them taking Ukraine is way too far, and it's just going to bridge all the way off into World War III. Because once Putin realizes that he can attack Ukraine indefinitely, and NATO can't join in on Article 5, bro, like, we will have no choice but to fight him. We will have no choice but to. Europe will form up against him if he conquers Ukraine. They will form up against him. They will end up fighting in World War III, and will be dragged in. It's imperative for us to not have this happen. And the only way we can do this is to make the Russians regret invading Ukraine. That Donbass region needs to be beefed to hell by air support. We need to make it an absolute meat grinder for the Russians. Putin, the citizens of Russia, these two, really the oligarchs of Russia and the average citizen, both need to feel the pain of the war in Ukraine. They need to fear the idea of any of their family members being sent over there. The casualty rate needs to be so fucking high that the citizens of Russia are outside the Kremlin demanding for Putin to end the war. That's how bad it needs to be. That way, the Russians can go off and lick their wounds and go from being a world superpower to what they really are, which is a joke. We can finally breathe for a little bit as it pertains to Russia being our enemy. We can write off a world war starting in Europe. And once China sees how we did the Russians in Ukraine, bro, them invading, they're not even going to consider invading Taiwan. They're going to chill for a little bit longer, which might secure us another 50 to 60 years of peace. But with the Vivek's plan, bro, World War III will approach within the next 10 years. Like, we won't be able to avoid it. right on time, actually. Right on time in the next 10 years. It'll be right on fucking time. So it's like, bro, like, no. Please don't let Vivek Ramaswamy into office, please. Conservative white America, please do not put in these isolationist morons. America cannot be the most dominant, powerful nation on the world and enjoy this Pax Americana, this American peace, if we are not involved in what's going on with the rest of the world. It just doesn't work that way. I'm sorry, but American global dominance doesn't run on magical energy in the sky. It just doesn't. And what people don't understand is that we're not sending a bunch of bread to the Ukrainians. This isn't a strip club. We're sending them billions of dollars worth of military equipment so that our children aren't getting drafted up to go fight in some bullshit Soviet Union reunification party. So that's my take. Vivek Ramaswamy absolutely cannot be allowed to be president. If your policy could possibly spark World War III, you gotta go. You can't be my president, bro. You can't be my president because you're just gonna get everybody killed. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Nikki Haley eviscerated him on this. It is imperative that Vivek Ramaswamy doesn't win. And to be honest, unless Trump starts speaking a little bit tougher about Putin and Ukraine, I don't want him in office either. Because he's sitting over talking about I would end the war in 24 hours. There's only one way you can end the war in 24 hours, and that's by giving Putin what he wants. The Ukrainians don't want to stop until the Russians go away, until they go back home. The only person who's the chooser here is Putin. Putin's the only one who can be come to with an agreement saying, all right, do this, do that. The Ukrainians refuse, and under any circumstance, to cede shit to Russia. The only way you can do this is by giving Putin half of what he wants here, which is unacceptable. The Russians cannot be allowed to believe that they, under any circumstance, can dictate what happens in Europe with violence. Fuck no, because then we're going to get dragged into it. Then we're going to be fighting in Europe when we shouldn't be. We should be enjoying another century of, well, last century was not peaceful. World War II happened. We should be enjoying the first century of pure American peace. And by peace, I mean us not being rounded up and drafted all to fight. Wars like Iraq and Afghanistan, that's lucky. As a nation, we're lucky to be able to fight wars where the citizenry of the nation don't even feel it. But a war, a world war, or even a major war in Europe with just NATO versus Russia, that still runs the risk of nuclear war. We can't afford to risk that. So, ultimately, bruh, please do not let Vivek win. Conservative white America, I'm begging you, please do not let these isolationist policies with ridiculous slogans like, we need to do stuff for Americans instead of giving all this money to Ukraine. What Republican politician do you know is interested in public health care, interested in also, like, no, what kind of public programs have Republicans suggested ever? This money can save us from World War III, and their argument is, well, we can put it elsewhere. Y'all don't want to put it elsewhere. And it ain't bread. It's literal, it's billions worth of weapons and ammunition, not just money. Just absolutely ridiculous. So please, conservatives, listen to me. Please heed me. Do not let this man Ramaswamy win, because we're all going to pay for it if this guy wins. I'm telling you right now, do not do it. So that's my video for today. I'm Rashad Crenshaw. Let me know what y'all think in the comment section below. Like, comment, subscribe. I'm out.